All right, hello. I'm Matt Molnar. I'm here with Nathan Walk, and we are both co-founders of Code City. And so I just kind of had the idea that we would record a podcast, kind of like really informal, just to kind of document what we're doing and see what kind of value we can add by just kind of talking about uh, what Code City is doing, but also the various business decisions that we're going through and such. And so Nate, I kind of wanted to I'm thinking maybe just starting off with you. You posted a mission statement to the Facebook feed the other day that I thought was kind of interesting. Do you want to talk about that really quick?
Yeah, the mission statement was actually birthed out of a mutual friend of ours, Kevin McAleer, who a couple of years ago had gone to General Assembly. It was a coding school in New York. And he went to this 3 month immersive and was hired at Amazon. And he, of course, moved to Portland, was it? Or
Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, like, do you really have to move out of Toledo to uh, have an awesome tech job like that, or is that environment or climate here? So I started talking to different people and found out that we really are kind of behind the times, I think. So yeah, Code City, the mission statement actually is that we want to transform the image of the Rust Belt from a lost and dying industrial wasteland to the place where civilization was disrupted once again by people who had built what the world had not yet imagined. And I know that sounds really lofty, but how cool would it be if Toledo, which was once known as the Glass City, which is having trouble producing glass, is my understanding, if we became known for something like code and we're known as Code City?
Hmm. Right. Yeah, just for the record, so like if anyone's listening and doesn't know what a code boot camp is, they're essentially like just really quick starter, like almost crash courses on how to do computer programming. There is an immense amount of computer programming jobs that can't be filled. Detroit alone has something like 10,000 unfilled positions for programming. And so there's a lot of people becoming coders with really good careers who do not have a college education. So a lot of the major cities have these boot camps to help bring people up in a matter of 12 weeks or so into how to be programmers and get an entry level job. I've worked with some of them in the Metro Detroit area. And so we look around and, Columbus has them, Detroit has boot camps. You look at Louisville, Kentucky has a couple boot camps, which is, a city roughly the size of Toledo, and Toledo doesn't have any. And so that's what really kind of got me, Nate, when you kind of brought it to me. Is like, this is something that was sort of already sparked in my mind, but I had no intentions of doing anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you told me about it, I was just like, yeah, we need this.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, as Code City has kind of morphed, I realize a person like myself who's an artist and is interested in code, it takes a person of a certain aptitude and commitment level to be able to code to the degree that a lot of these developer positions need. And I thought, wow, I don't think that I'm actually cut out for that. And so we've kind of expanded the vision to include people who are kind of peripheral in the tech world. Well, artists, digital artists are in the tech world, but myself as a graphic designer, I work closely with coders a lot. And so I thought, well, let's maybe expand this so that we bring people who aren't necessarily going to go to a coding boot camp. I had read some statistics that the admissions rate at some of the best code camps are 3 to 6%. And so that's a lot of people who show an interest who don't get in for whatever reason. And so we wanted to create a place that gets all of those people together in one and kind of finds and channels them into something that's productive, something they like and can fulfill a passion. But the Code Bootcamp itself is definitely one of our core goals. And it's a very difficult task, I found, to build something like that. The level of expertise, yourself being a senior developer for what, 10 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Um, being able to build a curriculum, to have the time and the expertise to be able to put something like that together is a pretty daunting undertaking, and it's going to take a lot of people to do that, I think. But in the meantime, we've been able to get a lot of energy going. There's a lot of interest. I think we may have 6 or 7 core students, I'll call them, who have already been self-teaching for a while and who are pretty far along in JavaScript. And we've also been able to attract a lot of artists, designers, people who are interested in film and writing and making movies. and a couple of entrepreneurs who have nothing to do with the tech world. We just had two massage therapists who just launched a business in Perrysburg about a year ago come in and give a talk on defending your delusion. So yeah, it's been a fun process so far.
Yeah, that's one thing I like. You mentioned that 3 to 6% admission rate into camps, and what I like about where Code City is right now, we're trying to establish curriculum such that anybody can walk in. And so rather than having an admission, because a lot of what these code camps do is they want to hire the brightest, hardworking, not hire, that you have to pay to go there. So they want to, accept the brightest people, because that way when they do go through their process, their program, there's a much higher chance they get hired. And then they can advertise and say, we have a 99% hire rate and all these things. And what I love is, like, right now, we're not worrying about that too much. We're instead saying, like, how can we give everyone who wants a shot a shot? Whether or not they have some crazy aptitude or some, super hard work ethic, obviously that'll help. But you can always give them a shot, and if they fall off the bandwagon and they're not able to, keep with it, that's fine. It's not, right now with the way we have it set up, we're not out anything if that happens. So that's something that's really appealed to me, at least, is the idea that, like, anybody can walk in.
Yes. In fact, I view us as almost like the welcome mat to the tech world. There's a huge populace out there who just really doesn't even know what coding is, or all the different possibilities that exist within the tech world, not just for a career, but just for personal passion or creativity. And so I think it's so neat that we're able to open this wide up to everyone, and almost be kind of, I don't want to say a recruitment center, but an educational force where we're kind of marketing the tech world in a way. We're saying, hey, do you know about these things that exist, these different creative paths? I consider coding a creative path, just a different way than I would,
Sure.
do in graphic design. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to be able to take that to people and talk to them about that, and then build this community, is super fun. But I think you're right. Out of that pool of people, there will certainly be those who could follow the path all the way to becoming a full stack front-end developer or back-end developer, no doubt. And we certainly want to help those people too. But I had early on realized, wow, I don't want to neglect this huge mass of people, this pipeline of people who are interested but may not necessarily end up in a position like that. And so far, it's been pretty amazing. Just the friends that we've made, and the human element of all this that's happened, and the connections that have happened. I think it's a really great thing.
Yeah, the support from all the other tech leaders and sort of like business-minded people in the city has been just super positive and whatnot. And maybe we'll, bring some of them on here at some point, whatnot. So I guess you're saying for Toledo, you're seeing this as like having an impact on the city. It's not just about, like, how do we start a school and how do we, train a few people, make a few bucks or whatever. Sure, we want that to happen, but it's also like, I mean, what is the vision you see for, like, Toledo as a whole? That this, granted, we don't know what's going to happen, but, like,
Right.
what is, like, what if we were to start with the end in mind? What is, like, that end that you currently see yourself pointing towards here?
Well, it is interesting how things are definitely changing, I think, in our society and in our culture and globally. And so things that used to be a barrier, like distance, aren't so much anymore. So our geographical location in Toledo, although it's considered prime by many, we've in a lot of ways have felt isolated, from Chicago and Cleveland, these bigger centers where people go. And I think that's becoming less and less. A person who is building some kind of digital product could build something in California or in Singapore and be in Toledo. And I think that's tremendous. And then as things start to become more automated, self-driving cars, I have to bring up the Hyperloop in every conversation. What if the Hyperloop were to exist in Toledo, and you could go to Chicago in 15 minutes at the speed of sound for the price of a bus ticket, which Elon Musk open sourced those plans a few years ago. And so things like that. I think that Toledo should be primed to be in position to take advantage of whatever global forces occur, so that we're there and we're ready to play our part in the global economy, and allow the people here to add value to that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just you hearing me say that kind of, like, inspires me, just because, like, I've had my own struggles. Like there's some development jobs in the Toledo area, and you can kind of commute to some in Metro Detroit. But in my experience, they only go to like a certain like skill level largely, and so where I'm at right now, not to say that I'm like super skilled or whatever, but like the challenges that I'm looking for, I find hard to find in the area, and the people and types of skills that I would like to learn from, I'm having a hard time finding in the area. So I've thought a lot about leaving, but just or moving on, I should say at least, maybe for a time, maybe to come back. But like hearing you talk about just, why can't Toledo be, an equal player? Not necessarily as big as Chicago, because we're not as big as Chicago or San Francisco or whatever, but why can't we at least, for our size though, we proportionately don't have the offerings, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
what I hear you saying is, why can't we have at least proportionately our own point and maybe more in the future?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point with, it's the innovation that I think that can happen here. If you have a core group of humans who work together, who have certain skill sets and backgrounds and interests, I feel like history has shown that people overcome all kinds of barriers. And it's not like Toledo is at a disadvantage with the tools that we need to do that. So I think that there are amazing people here. Yourself, your background, you're kind of a unicorn around here. Somebody who's got a computer science background, 10 years of experience with the things that you can do are the kind of people that Toledo's wanted to attract, and you're already here. So how cool would it be if you were part of a community that allowed you to, with maybe some artists or some other genius idea, put together a new innovation that we haven't conceived of yet that could very well change the world. Silicon Valley at one time wasn't what it is now. It's known for, didn't they develop the microchip? Is that where the silicon comes from?
Maybe I don't know. I think they took off largely just because there was this like massive like military funding out there many decades ago.
Okay.
I think that's kind of at least that's what I garnered from reading the Steve Jobs book.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I need to do a little more research on that. But I know there were places that at one time weren't really notable, and
Yeah.
things happened, and that's always changing.
Yeah.
And so I think that the goal for me is not about, oh, let's make Toledo the greatest city on earth or anything. It's to create a place where people who have families here, who have connections, don't feel like they have to move away just to make it economically. But there's also the certain excitement to being able to create things that might affect the way that we live. And so I'm excited about being part of that. Possible. Sorry, phone's ringing here.
That's cool.
So yeah, anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on that.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so I think we've talked pretty good about where we're at and where we've come from and such. So now what I kind of want to take a turn here, and maybe let's just open it up to like some business discussion about where we're going next. Do you have any personal next steps, or like where do you see the next steps for what we're doing and whatnot?
Yeah, I think it's important for me, being kind of an outsider to the tech community and not completely understanding how code boot camps work and how all the things that we want Code City to do work, that I've considered myself in kind of like a research phase. I'm learning. I didn't want to take steps too early that may solidify certain things in place that then I would wish later I hadn't done. So I've been talking to a lot of people, talked with you first. You were the very first person I talked to and kind of got some feedback on the general ideas, and that was tremendous to get this kind of going. And then from there, interviewing, talking with, and making friends with other existing entities in the community, people who are far smarter than me, who've been involved in the tech community for a long time and are really invested. And that was an eye-opener to me. I didn't know that this tech community existed. It was invisible. And that may have just been because I was in Perrysburg, or I'm not really
We're not
sure.
even looking.
Not even looking, right.
Yeah.
And so it was surprising at me to find out that these certain things did already exist. And immediately I was like, wow, I want to help what's already going if I can in any way. And I want to come alongside and be a part of that bigger picture in a complementary way. So I think it's been a process of finding out how can we best fit in, how can we maybe even connect some of these different organizations or play a part to unify Toledo. I do view every person that I've met so far, whether it's University of Toledo's Launchpad Incubator, Jordan Valdivias is over there, or Gene Powell at Seed, who has something called Startup Toledo, Scott Radcliffe at White Label, who has an advertising agency and builds amazing digital products. We want to fit in such a way that it forms a cohesion with the existing climate here. So to try to answer the question, that finding out what the existing conditions are and then casting a vision from there is really important. I think that answering those questions will help us decide on a business structure and a business path. And I do have a lot of thoughts on different contingencies on how we could play that out. And I think we're getting closer to being able to make a decision here soon.
Okay. So, like, what do you think that decision is regarding? Is it like regarding, our talks or curriculum? Is it regarding like another endeavor or something, or what do you see it as?
I think that one of the next steps for us is to establish an actual business structure, to get solidified.
Incorporate or something.
Something like that, yeah. So that we can then make other decisions that require other structures. For instance, right now, everything we've done has basically been, there's been no money that's changed hands. We've generated a pretty good energy in the community, but nobody has paid anything. It's been all free and fun and friendships. But eventually, there will be a time where someone's going to pay for a service, and we're going to then have to have, accounting things in place and yeah, exactly, taxes and people that can handle that kind of stuff, because a lot of those things can overwhelm one or two people. And I think that you and I both don't want to create something that overtakes our life personally, or that requires us to be there and give it our attention all the time. We both have other endeavors and things that we're doing. So we just have to put things in place that will allow this to grow and sustain in an effective way that won't wear us down.
Absolutely. So let's go just a tad deeper. We got a few more minutes here. I'm just kind of like, let's go a tad deeper with that decision, which I think is important. You're talking about incorporating and developing a formal legal entity and such in order to establish business processes. So we've talked about this a lot, but I think we're still kind of on the fence. Is nonprofit or for-profit?
Good question. Yeah.
Because it's a lot of I see a lot of nonprofit concepts of what we're doing. But at the same time, I think there's an argument for a for-profit. I mean, a lot of the boot camps are, for-profit, whatnot. And I don't know. I think that there could be arguments each way.
Yeah, I think there are definitely pros and cons of both, and I think we've been open to both. And so, whatever path we take, it has to be something that creates value for the people that are involved in the community, and it also has to be self-sustaining. And those are the questions, I think, some of the specific answers we get from other entities around Toledo that have an interest in this will help possibly guide us. Everything from our space to our locations to funding and tuitions is a big question. So things like that, I think, is probably explain why we've held off on setting up an official business structure right now.
Yeah, because if we are able to receive some sort of funding from various business entities in order to train people or something like that, if there's some sort of stipulations this can only go to a nonprofit, that could be reason to say, okay, we're going to be a nonprofit then, because that's how we're going to do that. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to make that decision based on just one type of if it's just this. Because, I mean, what if that's the first group that comes in, but the other 90% after that, it doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, so I guess we just need to sit down. But at the same time, what if none of that comes? It's potential that, some company over here offers us this and it has this stipulation to it, and it may never even happen.
Right.
So it's do we make a hindsight decision? Because I feel if we were to do that, then if there is a stipulation, then we're basically kind of locking ourselves a little bit. Not that we couldn't change, but I
Mhm.
feel like we are kind of saying, okay, this is what we're shooting for. Then we're shooting for this type of grant or this type of funding,
Yeah.
even if we don't have it lined up yet.
Yes, you're right. There are a lot of unknowns, I think. And as you were talking, and I'd had this thought before, but you just brought it back to me. Was is there any reason that we can't do both? Could we start a for-profit business and a nonprofit, different entities with similar missions and goals, and they can then we'd be free to let them take shape as things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, as a for-profit organization, we could do nonprofit things or what is typically associated with a nonprofit. We could still have things that are free. We could still do things that impact the community, things that would not enrich us personally. But then again, maybe it's an easier route to go the nonprofit route. Maybe it's harder. I've heard there's just a lot of learning involved, I guess, with all that. So
Yeah. So I guess we need to, I don't know, what's the next step then? Do we need to talk to someone, or what do you think?
yeah, I was actually looking forward to talking with Robert Tucker, who
Okay.
you had introduced me to, who does the Toledo Matters podcast.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he actually is an attorney. He works with RCO Law, and seeing if he's open to maybe not just being a consultant for us, but maybe guiding us through that process and get some direction going. So
Yeah.
I think for me that conversation was going to be pivotal.
Gotcha. Okay. So cool. That sounds like we kind of have at least a next step then in order to, because we definitely want to make this decision.
Yes.
In order to make that decision, we have to have a next step. So I guess the next step is to talk to Rob and possibly other people as well, and then hopefully have some guidance. So maybe we should write that on our to-do list then.
I say let's do it right now.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, I don't want to. There's so many other things I could bring up. I don't want to make this podcast too long. I do want to open it up. If you made it this far listening, please give us feedback. Like, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Maybe you hated the whole thing. Maybe you loved the whole thing. But if you could just tell us, like, what is adding value to you that would make you want to listen. We're not trying to really get a whole lot out of this. We just want to, like, add value to our listeners, kind of document what we're doing and such. So any feedback, however, blunt and candid, is absolutely appreciated.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. Yeah, awesome.